Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. November 17th, 2021 at 8:35 p.m. I'd like to acknowledge that the traditional our offices of the Wilfrid Laurier's Students Union are on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people. As for regrets, I received 2 regrets, one from Director May because unfortunately she is still preoccupied at work, and one from Director Shandok for personal matters. Other than that, I have received no other regrets from directors. Moving on to the adoption of the agenda. So I'd like to have a motion to actually amend the agenda to move the Grand River Transit presentation to the first agenda item, as well as to pull the monitoring reports GP2B, GP2C, GP2D, and GP2E from the consent agenda. Motion by Director Vale.
Yeah, just so my motion, yeah, I'm going to agree with that. So I think then I was going to suggest the Grand River Transit first, but I guess the point that needs clarification here is what agenda are we voting on? Because the agenda, the updated one after I had sent you a couple comments last night, just giving you fair warning about I was going to pull the, then you sent an updated one at 2:18, which I don't think any of us have had time to review. So I don't
That's
think
precisely the reason why we're going to pull
so
that. We're still going to have a discussion on the monitoring
No, but
reports.
to clarify, I guess what I'm saying is what version of the monitoring reports are we going with? Are we going with the one that was provided by that directors were prepared and was per our constitution, the 48 hours and the 24-hour?
We can go based off the original monitoring report, but
I just know that's what everyone.
I still provided the updated one because I think it would give directors, an idea of like where the mistakes were noticed upon second review too as well. But needs to say the monitoring reports will be removed due to the non-compliance issues with some of the items.
Yeah, and then that can just go at the end, I guess, or whatever. So I'll continue with this, moving the motion. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, motion by Director Vale, seconded by Director Del Giudice. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? As I see none, all those in favor, Director Bothwell.
I approve.
Director Bryant.
I approve.
Director Del Giudice.
I approve.
Director McCarthy. Director McCarthy. Thank you. Director Phillips.
I approve.
Director Smithington.
I approve.
Director Vale.
I approve.
And Vice Chair Sneedy. Motion passes unanimous consent. We can discuss conflict of interest later on due to our motion for the agenda. So I guess you have the floor for the Grand River Transit presentation.
Well, thank you very much for having me tonight. I really do appreciate this to the board here tonight, through the chairs and any members of the public or any students at large that are joining us tonight. I also appreciate the opportunity. We're still working from home, so wearing a dress shirt for the first time and making sure I can fit in it was a nice change of pace here on my end. I have one more request of the chair. If I can share my screen, I've got a presentation here, and then
absolutely fire away.
Fabulous. All right, here we go. We're in, and we are good. So I'm going to share my presentation here. I'm hoping you can all see that. Just a thumbs up from somebody to let me know it's there. Yep, great, wonderful. So I'm here tonight to talk about the Laurier GRT Upass program, specifically about to provide an update and a request to defer the Upass referendum to winter 2023. So I'm going to go into a bit more detail in a few slides here. Just bear with me. So just a quick update on who I am. As my Zoom picture suggested, there I am on the train once again. I'm a principal planner with the region of Waterloo. My program, I kind of have a couple of different portfolios. I'm with our transportation demand management group and our transit integration team. My role has been on that side of things, looking at capital improvements or infrastructure improvements, for example, in and around Laurier, so doing Seacrum Drive improvements a few years back. I also run our TravelWise program for the region. So we work with a local not-for-profit Sustainable Waterloo region, but it's a region-funded program. We actually work with the Laurier employee base on that program. So those two pieces were what I was working on prior to my role leading the Upass program in the last few years. I continue to work on those portfolios as well. I've been with Transit Services, which is our official name at the region for Grand River Transit, which is a department of the region. And I've been with the region for about 10 years. So I'm actually a Laurier alumnus as well. So in 2007, and I was an avid rider. There's the proof. There's my embarrassing photo of the night. I cannot fit into that cool star t-shirt anymore. So when I talk about being a Upass rider, yeah, the program was in place when I was there, and I come from a small town. And to me, to come here and then have the program available was my real first interaction with transit system, and being able to just show my card at that point and be able to go anywhere in the community was a huge change in my life. So that's just a little bit of a personal background on me. So today's agenda, I'm going to run through a brief history of the Upass program and general information, just to make sure we're all on the same page in case anybody's maybe less familiar with our with the Laurier Bus Pass program or more familiar. We're all kind of talking from the same side of our mouth on this one. And then I'll talk about our current situation and the current plan as it stands right now, and then some of the concerns that GRT has come across regarding because of the pandemic and transit awareness. And so I'll spend most of my time speaking about our proposal, and then finally wrapping up around the request of the board of directors that we shared in a letter earlier, and I'll kind of walk through that again here tonight, which basically boils down to a proposal to defer the referendum again until winter 2023. Open up for questions and discussions. I do have a lot of information attached to this presentation, a couple extra slides that we can talk on. If there's questions that lead us there, I can also just share that afterwards as well too for this group to consider. And just for the sake of time, I'm going to leave it up to you, and if you want me to dive into those pieces. So a little bit of a Upass price comparison to other Ontario universities. We have exemption criteria or refunds, and I've listed those out as well. We also have a brief ridership summary I can go into that looks at our historical trends over time and sort of our latest piece. And then again, coming from that background from integration and trying to improve access to and from transit, I've provided some information about sort of broadly speaking how the Upass has really shaped investment in transit and infrastructure in and around the Laurier area too, in case you're interested on what we've done and what's sort of already in the hopper and what's underway as we speak. So again, talking a little bit about the ancient history of the program and general information. So, what is the program? I'll touch on this really quickly. So our Upass program, or the, what used to be called the Bus Pass, is basically boils down to unlimited transit trips on GRT services. So GRT services include buses and light rail. And this is anytime, all year long. It's automatically loaded onto the one card, so you can tap and ride at any time. Students tap and ride at any time. The fee is assessed and paid as part of your tuition for each enrollment term. So typically that means you're paying for the 2 terms that you're at campus, but the Upass is actually on your card and valid all year round. So you pay for 2 and get the 3rd term free. So it's student-wide participation, as I'm sure many of you are aware, and sort of why the referendum is so particularly important. But student-wide participation provides us with the opportunity to offer a pass price that is significantly lower than our other unlimited transit pass products. So the concept is kind of similar to your how students participate in the health and dental plans at Laurier. And just kind of regarding our other pass products, the closest comparable pieces are our college pass, which is $305. It's $300 for the term plus a $5 fee for the card, or 4 adult monthly passes, which are $90 per month, with a $5 card fee for that first time you pick up your card. So the college pass is just under 3, and the adult monthly pass is just over 3 times the cost of the Upass program. When we talk about the program, we've actually had Upass program agreements since 2005. So we've had a fair bit of time here. So, I was one of the first cohorts to have it my entire way through at Laurier. And actually, the Students' Union was our first partner with GRT in that first year. In case there's graduate students listening in on this, I know the GSA was planning to observe this meeting tonight. GSA joined in 2007. You guys beat UW, which joined in 2007 and 2010, undergrads first, followed by the grads. So just some context about how we got where we are at now. Our agreements for the Upass program are typically about 5 years in length, and then they're reviewed and renewed. So that brings us into our current situation, which is really about the comment I just kind of wanted to make here was the focus on flexibility on both groups. We've really worked together on this in the last little while. Really had to be flexible in regards to the pandemic. So, pardon me. So basically what this means is our most recent Laurier Upass agreements were set to expire in August of 2020. So that 5-year terms I was mentioning came to end, we're planning to come to end at August 31st, 2020. At that time, in May 2020, Grand River Transit received Region Council approval to enter into new Upass agreements with the university groups, which would take us to 2025. This also included a new fee schedule, a Upass fee schedule. So the Students' Union and the GSA reported that they required student referendum at that time. The UW groups are a little different. They were able to enter into our new agreements immediately, but the Laurier groups reported that due to some changes that Phil could probably speak to better than myself, that you required student referendum. So at that time, Regional Council approved a 1-year extension of our what I'm calling the old Upass agreement, or the one that was set to expire, so that those agreements and the program and services could be maintained to students until referenda could be held in the 2020-2021 academic year. So at that time, the Students' Union and the Graduate Students Association supported this extension and this plan. And then came the COVID-19 pandemic. So this happened in May 2020. We got the extension, and we basically immediately had to suspend as all parties realized the full scope of the pandemic on day-to-day operations. So what we've done with the Students' Union, the Graduate Students Association, has basically on a term-by-term reviewed the program, reviewed return to campus plans, and basically had mutually agreed suspensions for the entire 2020-2021 academic year, which also resulted in a postponement of the referenda. So then that brings us up until this year, May 2021. Regional Council approved another 1-year extension of Laurier's old Upass agreements and introduced temporary pandemic-related Upass exemptions. The idea was we as staff working with the Students' Union and other university groups, we're trying to figure out a way that we could restart the programs for fall 2021 to start to walk hand in hand with return to campus plans. So as part of that, we also prepared a revised fall 2021 Upass fee, so with a price increase that could be approved without referenda at that time. So that brought the Upass fee to $105.50 for this year, and that fell within the group's non-tuition fee protocol committee. I think I got that title right. So we adjusted the 2021 fee. We also reviewed and adjusted the proposed fee schedule past that year. So for the remaining years of the agreement that would be presented at the future referendum. So we reduced the price of those so that they would be less than originally planned, or that they would go to referendum on a price point that was originally planned and proposed in May 2020. So at this time, the Students' Union and the Graduate Students Association supported this extension as well too. That brings us into fall 2021. Basically all of our Upass programs resumed this past fall. At both universities, but in particular at Laurier, we've been working with the Students' Union, Graduate Student Association reps, preparing to host student referenda in January 2022. So this coming January. So that brings us into the current plan. So as we're looking right now, January 2022 is technically when we're positioned to have to host the student referendum on the Upass. We've prepared a draft student referendum question as well as the supplementary details for the Upass program. So not only the question, but any additional information that can be presented alongside this. We've actually submitted that in advance of this board meeting to meet Laurier's referendum policy. So we have that ready to go. And we've worked with our partners to try to get that to this point. So that vote is basically boils down to whether the student groups, the students wish to enter into the new UPass agreement and the associated annual price increases. This is what those price increases look like as of right now. So September 2022, the fee would be assessed at $113.30. In 2023, $116.70 to $118.97. There's a range. It's between 3% and 5%. It's a little bit more clear on my next slide here, and I can always come back to this. But this is what would, if we move ahead with referendum as planned, this is what the price points look like for the coming years. So I just wanted to take a quick pause and say we've thought a lot about the potential outcomes of the January referendum as part of that development of the referendum package required for the referendum policy at Laurier. So what does the question look like? It basically boils down to, do you support the renewal of Grand River Transit's Universal Transit Pass program agreement with the Students' Union, or in the case of the Graduate Students Association, the language changes slightly to Graduate Student Association. Basically effective next year, September 1st, 2022, the UPass fee would be assessed at $113.30 per term, with the annual increase between 3% and 5%. One piece that we wanted to raise as part of that referendum question is that Students' Union can choose to renew the agreement with GRT when it expires in 2025 if the terms remain the same. So that is something we have as draft language. Now we say can, because if the Students' Union wishes to proceed with an additional referendum at that time, that's well within your right, but it is an opportunity. So if it is a yes vote, things are a little bit simple from everyone's perspective. Laurier students continue to use their one card for unlimited rides on all GRT services, buses and Ion Light Rail at any time. The special UPass exemptions remain available. If it's a no, the Students' Union participation in the UPass program would end. Effective September 1st, 2022, undergraduate Laurier students would need to pay more than 3 times as much per term for unlimited rides with GRT's monthly passes. At this point, we have no guarantees about any other product like the college pass being applicable. So this is sort of what we have to frame the question around. It also has a challenge that with the loss of UPass program revenue, there is the potential of service reductions in the university area. So that's kind of what we're facing going into January of 2022 on the trajectory that we're currently on. Things get even more complicated based off of some recent experience since the relaunch of the programs in fall 2021. One thing we've really found, particularly in the university setting at Laurier, has been a lack of student awareness about the UPass program in general. So this is probably the understatement of the year, or the most overstated comment of the last 2 years, but COVID-19 has had a significant impact on both campus life and public transit. GRT this fall did a series of student-focused initiatives, and we uncovered a series of awareness issues with regards to the UPass. So for example, we had staff ambassadors at Laurier Waterloo Park during O Week. And what we found, I was one of these people, we actually had to stop many Laurier students from unnecessarily buying tickets at the platform because they didn't know about the UPass on the one card. Following this, we put out some signage as well too to try to drive home the message. Please use your card to tap when we weren't there. So we continued that after the O Week piece, but it was significant because it wasn't just first years as well too. That was the other piece that we found through some of our conversations with the students that we were stopping from unnecessarily spending money. The other piece we found was later on in the fall, we did an on-campus event after the fall reading week. So in the concourse at Laurier, and we found that the students we engaged with there, we actually had a pretty successful discussion with a lot of students. We found that UPass awareness remained surprisingly low. So what happened? Again, everybody points to this, but this is definitely something that we're seeing. It's the pandemic. To put it in context, if the referendum are held as planned in January 2022, most first and second year students will be voting on a program and service that they have interacted with for the first time in fall 2021, when community restrictions are still in effect. Laurier is in the middle of a transitionary term of of return to campus before the full on-campus return scheduled for winter 2022. Interestingly, though, too, senior students are also kind of at a disadvantage here. Most senior students have also had minimal interaction with the Upass program on GRT's new network. So our system was completely overhauled and redesigned when Ion Light Rail launched in summer of 2019. So we also redesigned our entire GRT network. 800 plus stops were changed or impacted, and 30 plus routes, especially in the KW area, the Kitchener-Waterloo area, were changed as well. So fall 2019 is basically our only term not impacted by the pandemic with our new system since Ion launch. So this takes me to the one message I really wanted to kind of lay out and in front of you all tonight. You know, GRT's opinion is basically that more time and a concerted effort is required from GRT, and it's something we're committed to do to reintroduce Laurier students to the Upass program before students vote on its future. So tying back to that key message is the idea that we'd like to propose deferring the referendum from January 2022 to winter 2023. The idea being that if we do a 1-year extension of our old Upass agreement, so another 1-year extension to bring us to August of 2023, we're also proposing a base fee of $107.61 per student as of 2022. So if you saw my previous slides, it's the intended referendum vote for what the fee would be on September 1st, 2022 is 113 and change. So the idea is we're seeking a 2% inflationary increase on the 2021 Upass fee as a bit of a compromise to get us through. The reason is that 2%, this aligns with GRT's proposed public fare increase plan as well too. So basically across the board, this is what we're looking at. If you want context, there's a recent CBC article too on sort of the impact of fuel charges and the inflationary costs from a transportation sector for this year, which has been recently announced, and it's actually closer to 10%. But that's not something we want to entertain, and we have no interest in entertaining. But this is where regional council is coming from when they're pushing for this 2% piece, kind of across the board. The other benefit of this minor increase is similar to what we did last year. It's something that could be authorized by Laurier's non-tuition fee protocol committee if this is something that this group tonight supports as well. The points 1 and 2 allow us to defer the referendum until winter 2023. And the main reason we want to do that, again, I can't stress this enough, it's not that we don't want to do it. We understand that, you know, this is something that if we support you as university partners, we've had these long-term relationships. We understand that you have to check back in. But the biggest thing is we'd like the opportunity to rebuild student experience with the Upass program while students are returning to normal campus life. So as part of, alongside Laurier's broader vision of getting people back to campus life and campus study throughout 2022, so that we can have a vote with people who've had experience with the system, are informed about it, and had an opportunity or reason to use it in the community. The other piece I just wanted to flag quickly was the idea that we would maintain our Upass exemption criteria, which were introduced in fall 2021. So these exemption criteria, and again, I'm quoting refund because neither group really wants to use that language, but you know, effectively there are conditions where students can be exempted from the fees. And it's something that we clarified and worked with the Students' Union to make more clear as part of the reinstatement of the program this fall. We also had a pandemic-related refund that will remain in effect for January, but it is something that we'll reassess each term as we progress through 2022. The big takeaway tonight was something a little different than when we talked to the Students' Union before. Council support, regional council support in principle for the above is already concerned. So if this group is supportive of this, we're in a really good position that the final council approval, tentatively scheduled for December 15th, is still required, but we've already got their approval in principle. So it's a more seamless kind of process. And the main thing here is decisions by December are necessary. We're really aware of Laurier's referendum policy. We've been trying to meet it to make sure that we're positioned that if necessary, we can proceed with the January 2022 referendum. But we want to be able to have this discussion tonight, these decisions shaped out with the idea that we could potentially have everything in place and postpone that referendum and not impact the policies that you have in place for these type of things. So that brings me, I'm almost at the end. So the request of the board of directors tonight, we request that the Students' Union and Graduate Students Association, for those listening, will support the proposal to defer the January 22 Upass referendum to winter of 2023 in order to maintain the Upass program alongside Laurier's return to campus, and to work with us and the Laurier administration to amend and extend the old Upass agreement again and include the associated September 2022 Upass fee of 107.61. So this is again, I'm going to share all this information. It's also in the letter you received, but this is comparing the first columns are comparing the if we move ahead with the referendum as planned for January 2022 versus if we, in the highlighted section here that I've highlighted, if we are able to postpone the referendum to winter of 2023, we'd be looking at going to 107.61 in September 2022, and basically kicking out those next fare increases. So we're basically inserting a new price point, a new moderate price point in between the eventual jump to 113.30, and then just cutting off the last year of the price increases and be something that we would reevaluate together in 2025. And as I mentioned, that's a period that we could renew, but again, you would reserve the right to hold a future referendum if the terms or if situations change and you think it's necessary as well too. I have one more quick commentary and then I'm going to open it up to questions. Thank you so much for your patience. But I just wanted to speak about the value of the program sort of beyond just being an unlimited trips program and what it sort of means to, as part of pandemic recovery, some of those broader visions for both Laurier, the region, and the community at large, the student community at large. So value for money, our UPass programs keep Laurier a competitive world-class school. So prospective students see something similar to the Upass program at most Southern Ontario universities and now nationwide as well. So, this is there's a value here as far as when you think of new students supporting the board moving forward. So again, I talked about the student-wide participation and the idea that it allows for significantly lower costs for unlimited trips than other pieces. But I wanted to touch on what this actually looks like. So I was able to pull from our complete fall 2019 term and look at Laurier's Upass activity. So what we saw in fall of 2019 was 11,674 Laurier students, so unique students, pardon me, and 11,000 of those being undergraduate students or student union students use their Upass at least once. And made approximately 458,000 trips. I say approximately, those numbers are pretty concrete, except our ION boardings are a bit unique on how we're able to count those. So we actually have to base those off of fare inspection data. So if anything, this is actually underrepresented total, but it does give us the best, most complete picture of the amount of times that students are tapping by group. So if you look at those two numbers and the price points of fall 2019, Laurier's price per trip was effectively $251 per trip. So GRT's ticket price, for example, is $286. So that's if our regular pass price, and then our cash fare price per trip is $325 too. So, the value for money proposition, I just wanted to make sure that we had something that we could share to highlight that. So that's a bit of a snapshot of what fall 2019 looked like. The sustainability and climate action piece is something I know this group is probably getting more and more involved in. It's something that we've been more involved with since the declaration of a climate emergency. But basically, the Upass supports Laurier's overall sustainability objectives and action plan, particularly focused on creating partnerships to form sustainable programs and increase sustainable transportation uptake. It also supports the vision of your eco-hawks, the idea that we're promoting a culture of sustainability on student transportation behaviors, and ideally helping become the change they see in the world. So one of the pieces of the Upass piece, my background being in transportation and management, it introduces people to transit and allows them to see what it can do for them as well too. And then finally, it supports the community goals for sustainable transportation. The region's strategic plan talks about this. And then we now have a community-wide climate action mitigation program. So Laurier is a leader in sustainability, and we want to work together on this. And then finally, for transit equity or transportation equity, Upass programs eliminate the barrier of having to pay for transit on the spot, which can be a significant challenge to anyone, especially as we move away from cash in the community. So having Upass on a one card makes transit more affordable and easy to use. You don't need cash or debit cards to ride for a student to be able to ride our system. But more importantly, it provides equal transit options and community accessibility among all Laurier students. So basically, the students who need the Upass the most have access to transportation at all times and at no extra cost and with no special conditions. And then I just kind of wanted, I know this is a bit, of a piece, but I've got to say too, at the end of the day, GRT in the region, we're not for profit. We're a municipality. Our goal is the same as Laurier. Our goal is the same as the region. We want to support students to connect with the community and sincerely, we want to make it feel like you have a home here too. So I just wanted to touch on those pieces in particular. I'm going to bring it back to this slide just to open up the discussion. And again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your patience too as I walk through that.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Kevin, for a presentation, giving the board a broader understanding, the board and as well as our representatives from the GSA. So I guess we can open up the floor for questions. I see Director Vale, yes.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Marshall. No, thank you for your very informative and excellent presentation. I certainly, I think, agree that perhaps it might be challenging to put this to referendum, this coming January, just given the circumstances where I think the reality, and I think, and this kind of speaks for a lot of things across campus, is a lot of students haven't really had exposure to campus for potentially 2 years or more. Now, now my one question is, like, if I mean, regardless of what the outcome might be in this board meeting and the sentiments of my fellow directors, if like, what is the plan, or I don't know if you're able to speak to the plan for the January, sort of, given that in terms of the transit in the Waterloo, Wilfrid Laurier area, given that we're going to have more students back on campus, like, is it going to resume more of a normal sort of service level that'd be consistent, comparable to like pre-COVID, or sort of what is the experience probably students sort of can anticipate, like, is it in terms of whether it'd be more normal or not?
Yeah, those are great questions, and through the chair, thank you very much. And yeah, my response is through the chair here to Director Vale. Yes, so the reinstatement of the fall 2021 Upass actually was a major catalyst for us being able to reintroduce most of our university services and most of our and from there allowing us to expand further. So the intent is that we will continue to ramp services up closer to pre-COVID levels. Most of our services now have approached that threshold. Some of those are conditional, but that's kind of more broadly speaking. But basically, when the programs were instated in the fall term, we saw basically as close to normal of our system services for the university area as possible. We've also been bringing in trips as part of that too. So I know I'm kind of saying most. The one thing what we're doing is I can't emphasize enough flexibility. So we've had a bit of a bank of service hours, which have allowed us to put in extra service, particularly in the university area, as we've seen crowding, because you might have noticed this on campus or just generally in the community, but travel behaviors have changed pretty significantly. So we're seeing, we didn't want to lock in a particular firm frequency for the fall term until we saw where we were seeing peaks and how they were different. And we're really conscious of not having crowding on the vehicles too. So we have this additional bank of services that have been allowed us to kind of introduce more services throughout the term too, and to kind of offset some of those demand pieces. So the short answer is yes. With the continuation of the Upass program, we will continue to see services or continue to see our services be near normal, and if anything, increase as we enter into 2022 as well.
Okay. Next, Director Smithington.
Awesome. I think that was a great presentation. I do appreciate you coming out and just saying your piece. I do want to point out one thing that I kind of thought like went untouched, and that's, I think, the fact that in terms of bettering student awareness, I think that'll definitely come naturally once like the King Street construction is done. And I'd go as far as to say like it's a reason that like things seem less normal than we might typically be used to. Like obviously the pandemic is a relevant factor there, but getting from kind of like the student slum like side of campus like towards like Columbia and even like on campus, like kind of how Brandon was saying, that speaks to the idea of like things like kind of going back to normal. So having that year to kind of let everyone experience what true normal is with respect to like having our most important road back and be functional, I think that's definitely going to be beneficial. And I think it definitely it would amount to a more informed referendum. And I think I think everyone should be like entitled to a more informed referendum.
Through the chair, I would say you said that better than I could have said it myself. It is something, historical comparisons are hard to make in our ridership because of the network changes. But King Street reconstruction has been an ongoing multi-year, and I think this is a safe space to say it, a headache for all of us. And in particular, the impacts to Laurier for convenience and accessibility on some of those main routes like 7 are clearly still being felt. So absolutely. I have a slide here at the end, and I want to get more questions, but one thing I wanted to flag was one of the benefits of King Street wrapping up not only is opening up the corridor once again, but we have some pretty significant streetscaping and investment that's going along with that. So you're going to see what I've got to show you. So we're actually going to see shelters coming in on the campus that will, I'm just going to share this real quick. So our efforts to turn Laurier into something of a transit gateway. So I've just highlighted here too, at the campus, this whole project involves some streetscaping to make it more pedestrian and transit friendly, bringing in these major shelters, turning I would say almost something like a hub at University and King. So again, raising the profile both physically and in the community. And so yeah, we're going to see infrastructure improvements that will help that. But I really want to stress our marketing group and our affairs group is committed to having a presence, working with the students union and Laurier at large as administration to just reconnect with the students. Something I think all groups at the students union and across the university are trying to do. So thank you.
Awesome. Next, Vice Chair Stevie.
Thanks for the presentation. Apologies if this was mentioned earlier. My audio was cutting out a little bit during your presentation. I was just wondering if there was an update on the University of Guelph's fall price, if they had one. I noticed the winter price was listed.
Yeah, so through the chair, so their Upass program did not exist this past fall. So their agreements were allowed to expire during COVID. So I actually just touched base with our colleagues in Guelph about a week or two ago. So their program is starting back up in, they actually hosted a referendum this fall. And their program is starting back up in winter 2022 at, oh, sorry, let me just pull up, I'm waiting for my slide deck there. They're starting at $150 is their Upass fee price for January 2022.
Okay, perfect. Next, Director Vales on speaker list.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Marshall again. Just a quick question in terms of like, if I don't know if you'd be able to speak to sort of any of your sort of marketing or outreach efforts sort of you might have planned for kind of the upcoming winter term. Like I just think to myself, like back to when I was, in first year, sort of learning how to understand the bus system and how it all worked and stuff was kind of being on campus and knew it. Like it was sort of one of those things that was a bit challenging at first, right? And then you get the hang of it and stuff. And so I think we're going to be having thousands of students who are going to be in that situation, particularly first and second year. So I'm wondering, like how does the bus system work? Like all those different pieces and stuff, like that's sort of more targeted to students that they can kind of understand. I don't know if there's anything because I think that might be another aspect to consider as well.
Yeah, through the chair, thank you very much. I will preface this by saying I would love any and all suggestions this group has. Although my student card looks super cool, I am no longer in touch with the student population like I like to think I am. But one thing we have done that really helped us out was when we did those on-campus events this fall, we got connected with the residential, the Res Life group at Laurier as well. So from that group, they helped us pull out the messaging. We did a complete overhaul of our online presence too for our GRT websites with regards to the Laurier program and the UW program. So grt.ca/Laurier or grt.ca WLU, if you're an old school person like me, are both up to date with and basically walks through in a way that doesn't seem like preachy about like basically a complete introduction to the system. So I did take a quick look at the student union page too. If you guys want to just beg, borrow, and steal from us, please, by all means, go ahead too, and feel free to take anything that's useful off of that page. We're trying really hard to cross-pollinate between our social media, which we typically have. We don't have a strong student following. It is one of our gaps and something we're aware of and something we're trying to remedy. But any way we can help kind of cross out the messaging is something that we want to do on social media. But on presence, in-person activity is something that we definitely want to keep up. Being on the platforms, being on campus. It's not just for January, it's, summer and especially next fall as well too. So the campaign, we have the full commitment of our marketing group on this one, and yeah, any opportunities or items that you see that we've overlooked or something that we should absolutely consider, I would sincerely appreciate too.
Okay. Excellent. Does that answer your question, Director Vale?
Yes, it does. And then I just had a follow-up to
okay, if you have
for
a follow-up
you
question.
to the executive director or the director of policy research and advocacy. It just relates to around more the policy and sort of procedural aspects of this in terms of whether someone just be able to kind of provide a bit of background in terms of whether we're able to even extend this or whether it has to go to referendum this year, or if somebody could just kind of speak to that.
Yes, Executive Director Champagne.
So I believe that by coming to the board, the whole idea is that if the board approves the idea of a 1-year extension, because of the increase, it doesn't necessarily have to go back to referendum. But the things that the board should be aware about is that we've already done a 1-year extension of an expired agreement. It does fit within the non-tuition fee protocol guidelines in terms of the percentage that would trigger a referendum. But I think that GRT is very committed to going to referendum. They would just like a little bit more time to be able to have better data and better experience with the students, as Kevin has been very detailed in his presentation. Does that make sense? So I don't think there's any challenge if that's the way the board wants to go. I'd be curious to know what the board's thoughts are, and also I know we have, I think, 3 guests from the Graduate Students Association and what their thoughts and if they have any questions.
Yes, I'm keeping tabs on them on the speakers list, but I hope that answers your question, Director Vale. We'll move on. Vice Chair Sneedy.
Thank you. One more question. The unlimited taps includes express buses too, correct?
Correct. Our entire network. So express buses, light rail transit, Ion bus in Cambridge, Anything with the GRT logo on it, you can use your UPass on.
Thank you.
Excellent. Director Bothwell?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to share what I'm thinking. I am very much in favor of extending it for 1 year. I think the UPass is very, very beneficial. It has taken me to my crappy part-time jobs before and saved me a lot of money. I do think people right now with classes still being online, some potentially, hopefully not online next semester, like still won't know the full benefit of the UPass until next year. So I would say I'm in favor of extending it for a year.
Okay, thank you, Director Bothwell. Director Del Giudice.
Yeah, so without trying to parrot exactly what Director Bothwell said, I am in complete agreement. I think it's a great idea to extend this by a year, mainly that students are not informed of all of the GRT's positive benefits it can have on a student experience. COVID just made it such that students were away from campus and they weren't able to access the bus pass. So I'm in full agreement with this, and I'm prepared to make a motion if necessary.
Thank you, Director Del Giudice. The speakers list, by the way, is open to to anyone in the gallery who would like to ask some questions. I have a quick question. I'd like to just speak on behalf of some students, including myself, who are part-time, because I know that there was a change in the agreement where in the prior years, if you only took 3 out of 5 classes, you were considered a part-time student and were able to be in the bus pass. But I noticed that some of the more mature students who were deciding to take the same thing, 3 out of 5 students, 3 out of 5 courses, they were unable to be in the bus pass because of the change to having it to be a minimum requirement of 4 out of 5 classes. So I want to know if there was going to be any change of that minimum requirement in this agreement, in this extension.
I am going to just have to double check the draft. If you can bear up,
Yes.
Phil, are you
Yes,
there?
Phil?
Yep, I can answer that. The extension that they're asking for would be an extension of the existing agreement that had expired. So the answer to your question is no, part-time students would not be included.
Mhm. I just want to bring that point up because if we are trying to bring it to referendum, I know that a lot of mature students who are returning back to campus who were able to be for at least 1 year, in the pre-COVID times and decided to not take full courses, they were quite shocked when they were unable to get the UPass. So I think that might be something to look into if for the referendum question.
And thank you to you, the chair. Just one point of clarification. So the particular scenario you gave was, could you lay that out for me one more time?
So
I just want to take this back to discuss further.
I think Phil might be able to give some interesting.
Andrew's concern is the definition of a part-time student. So anybody who's taking 3 half credits per term undergraduate classes is qualified as a part-time student and does not qualify and is not assessed the UPass from GRT.
Yeah. And the reason why.
So hold on, those definitions are set by the institution. And just as a historical reference, part-time students were once assessed the UPass fee, and they voted in referendum overwhelmingly to no longer be assessed that fee because a vast majority of part-time students were not particularly interested.
Okay. No, thank you. No, I think that brings a lot of clarification. That I just want to also bring up one more point because another person brought up. And I was in that same position too, as well, where under OSAP, a full-time student is 3 out of 5 courses, but not with the institution. So I think that is just something to keep in mind if we do decide to have the extension for this, because I noticed in your presentation that you did say that you're trying to target mature students, and I believe, or senior students, and I believe those are the ones who are more likely to take part-time courses, to take either internships or part-time jobs within the KW region. Okay, next we have Ally on the speakers list.
Sure, thank you so much for the presentation. It was really informative, and I learned a lot and gained a lot more clarity about the proposal. The GSA will be withholding a decision around this proposal tonight. We want the opportunity to take this information back to our team and our group and have a more fulsome discussion. And we'll be following up with you, Kevin, around some of either our decision or any other follow-up questions we have.
Through the chair, thank you very much for that update too, and that's fine. I don't need a response from your group tonight. A letter response is more than adequate, and actually, following the process for tonight will be excellent for the students union, and any sort of follow-up formal response would be very much appreciated as well too. But I'm happy with whatever outcome comes out of tonight as well. So thank you to both groups.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Director Bryant.
Yeah, and just to start off, I'd like to echo some similar sentiment that Chair Dang had raised there with the description of part-time versus full-time students, but that's not a conversation for this particular meeting, I don't think. That's something I think we'd have to have a discussion outside of this, because obviously GRT does not really dictate that. But I do agree on that point, Chair Dang, that it is a little bit of complex. It's a bit of a complexity because most of our senior students at Laurier do take 2 to 3 courses per term, typically 3. And that makes a little bit of a complication for those students, especially since, as you mentioned, they do also contribute to considerable ridership in typical years because they're using their ridership to get to their co-ops if it was not a COVID year. But beyond that, I am just wanting to say that I am very in support of this. I'm a Waterloo resident since birth. Like, I've been here my whole life. I went through the ridership with GRT through high school, now through university, and I know how terrible it gets in the winter. So I'm very much excited to see some new shelters on campus coming up, hopefully potentially in slightly increased service or even just the general service that we had pre-COVID. But I also wanted to ask Kevin one question. I know you've offered to allow us to use your graphics on the GRT website and any sort of advertising materials to get sort of the notes out there to the students who are less informed. But is there any plans from the GRT to make additional trips down to the campus here at Waterloo to engage the student population at the moment?
Yeah, through the chair, we have at least one more plan for December, regardless of decisions from tonight. We're doing an information session. We would like to do that on a turn-by-turn basis moving forward to at least have that on-campus presence. And I'm old school, but I think that's a key piece, is being there, being on campus, and then particularly during O week. I can't remember which one of you said it, but I know for me, I still remember, interacting with staff, just helping me figure out how the heck, you mean all I had to do was just show my one card? Like, that is almost a kind of an unbelievable barrier for students, right? That's it. I'm just supposed to show or tap. Nowadays, just tap the card and I'm good to go. So, that presence, having staff ambassadors around, is something that we see the benefit, and we're seeing the impact, and it's all part of that messaging piece. So yeah, we will continue to have an on-campus presence. And I think the schedule that we've kind of sorted out makes some sense, beginning of term, after the reading week, and then a follow-up on near end of term as well too, just to provide those details. What I see kind of evolving with that is once we are in exiting recovery and we're looking at service improvements again, we can have information about what's coming and what's planned, and being able to showcase that as well too. So the region as a whole is taking a much more kind of like showcasing ourselves better. There's a better understanding that if we put it out there, we got to let people know what we're doing and explain it to them too, whether that's infrastructure improvements, opening up new shelters, or even just new connections like getting to and from an LRT station along a multi-use trail. So it's something you're going to see more of, and something we want to keep up. So thank you.
Excellent. Director Phillips.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Kevin, as well, for coming out tonight Hey, as a quick follow-up to Director Brian's comments, is the GRT looking for any support from the board in marketing to and informing students in the past?
Through the chair, we would love to have support or any participation in helping us connect with the students. It isn't a formal request tonight, but anything that we can enhance that partnership would be great. But I'm going to I see Phil's got his hand up there, so I'll let him go ahead.
In the agreement, there is a formal marketing relationship. So in the Hall of Fame, which is the hallway where Wilf's and the U-Desk is, there is a GRT screen that is supposed to be on with bus schedules and things of that nature. Full disclosure, I don't remember what the status of that is. I don't think that system's been reconnected since coming back on campus, Kevin. So that's definitely something that we can circle back on. And then we've always had a really strong relationship with GRT, especially around the beginning of the terms in terms of communicating with students. So that kind of quote unquote return to normal that we've been dancing around is would certainly be helpful.
Does that answer your question, Director Phillips? Okay. So I think from what I'm hearing, the discussion that the board is towards a decision. So I guess we can bring up a motion to approve of the Upass extension for an additional year up to 2022 for the next, sorry, 2023 for the next referendum. Motion by Director Del Giudice, seconded by Vice Chair Cini. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? As I see none, all those in favor, Director Bothwell,
I approve.
Director Bryant,
I approve.
thank you, Director Del Giudice,
I approve.
Director McCarthy, Director McCarthy. Okay, we'll go back to you there. Director Phillips,
I approve.
Director Smithington,
I approve.
Director Vale,
I approve.
Vice Chair Sneedy.
I approve.
Back to you again, Director McCarthy, do you approve? I do not believe he is there, so I guess the motion passes with unanimous consent without Director McCarthy. Oh, I think he is approving. Okay, so yeah, the motion passed with unanimous consent, so yes.
How did he approve exactly?
I think he is trying to send me a text on another platform, but we'll basically just for the record, he is not voting in this motion, so the passes with unanimous consent without Director McCarthy. Okay, at this point, I'd like to thank Kevin for his time and for the presentation, and I believe we'll be in contact soon, to work out the motions of the marketing plan that we were discussing. Yes, Executive Director Champagne.
When will we find out about the region? Is that the 5th? Was that the 15th of December? So we'll find out the next day.
That is, yeah, that's the official sort of I hate to say rubber stamp, but effectively yes. So we have their support in principle already through a committee of the whole proposal that we basically outlined the strategy before we submitted the letter. So that final approval can be done at our next committee meeting. So council meeting is December 15th. So that is the intent when everything will be checked off on our end. So yeah, so just for the referendum policy, I guess, has to kind of stay, we have a package that's sort of back end, but we have council's, I can formally say I have council support in principle for this as it stands right now. So tonight's acceptance of this will then take that update back to council. They'll effectively approve our information report and our recommendations to amend the agreement on December 15th.
Okay, I'll follow up with you either tomorrow or Friday. Is that okay?
Yep, that's great. But I'll use this meeting and the information I had here to at least start the preparations. Thank you all. And again, through Phil, or anyone, any way you want to get in touch with me, my contact information will be provided through the chair. Please send me a request and I'll send you the package, the information package I shared tonight. But again, I'm open to discussion for any way we can connect with the student group, with the students at Laurier, and any ideas that this group may have, and what's working or what may not. But any way to help us better reach that group. Thank you very much. I sincerely mean it.
Yeah, well, we'll hope to get more information after the council meeting, I assume. But on that note, again, thank you for your time tonight, Kevin, and also thank you for our colleagues in the GSA for coming here and also representing the graduate student voice.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, yes, Director Bryant, you have a question?
Sorry, I do have a small, just quick question. Kevin, do we have access to any of the planning information for what sort of renovation, they're not renovations, but constructions being done on King Street that we could look through as well? Is that possible, or is that something that's not available to us?
I'll give you the piece that I shared in the presentation. If you're looking for additional details, I'd be happy to get the project manager to send it to me. So if there's specifics, like you're looking at, like very specifics of what the layout of the road layouts are, I can definitely get that information as well too. But I'll let you take a look at the package, and then feel free to email me directly, and I can I'm directly connected with the project manager on that one, because of some work we've done together on it. So yeah, I can definitely get you more additional information if you need it.
Perfect, that's great. Thanks, Kevin.
Just to echo that, I think if it's possible, Kevin, before you leave, if you could send the presentation you had to either
Absolutely.
myself or Phil, I think the board will definitely benefit from that, and we can also get that posted too as well.
Great.
Pretty confident everything that you presented in that presentation was in the documents that we shared with the board, no?
Pretty much.
Yeah, but I don't mind. I've got the email ready to go as well too, with the PDF version of
Okay.
tonight's presentation. So
I think just for the transparency piece, I think it will not be a bad idea to also post it on the board resources page too as well for the ownership to look at.
Great. Yeah, no problem on my end. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Kevin.
All right.
And I hope you have a wonderful night.
Thanks, you too.
Now
Take
we
care,
can
everyone.
move on to our next agenda package, agenda discussion. We are a little bit behind schedule due to that very engaging conversation regarding the presentation. So I guess now we can move on to approval of the consent agenda. So that will just be the monitoring report, EL2A and EL2D. So can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Director Vale, seconded by Director Del Giudice. Would you like to speak to your motion? Have a good night, Ali. Any discussion on the matter? As I see none, all those in favor, Director Bothwell,
I approve.
Director Bryant,
I approve.
Director Del Giudice,
I approve.
Director McCarthy. Director McCarthy. We'll go back. Director Phillips,
I approve.
Director Smithington,
I approve.
Director Vale,
I approve.
and Vice Chair Sneedy. Vice Chair Sneedy, are you there?
I approved in the chat, sorry.
Oh, sorry, I just noticed that. Thank you. Again, Director McCarthy, do you approve? Okay, the motion passes unanimous consent without Director McCarthy. Vice Chair Sneedy, is it possible to try and get in contact with Director McCarthy to make sure that he's actually on the call? Okay, thank you. Okay, we can, since we're a bit behind, we can discuss the monitoring reports either now or at the end. But before we do that, I'd like to ask for conflict of interest. Is there any conflict of interest to clear this meeting? There may be when we get into one of our committee election discussions, but for now, we can go on to comments from the chair of the board and CGO. So I have a couple updates to give. So we did end up hiring a board secretary. However, that candidate has not responded back to me yet in terms of their, the congratulatory acceptance letters. So for the time being, we will hold on that, and if I don't hear anything from the candidate, then we'll go to the second ranked candidate. Also, the Senate vacancies are nomination forms are available. So for those who are interested, the process that they send me an email and I submit the form back to them. I've provided the form to the board. So if there's any changes that like to be requested made, please let me know immediately. But other than that, it is the same form that has been used in prior Senate by-elections in the past, which I think Director Vail will remember very fondly because he was a part of that process, I believe, in the previous years. But other than that, I don't have any other updates. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me now. Yes, Director Vail.
Yeah, I just noted, and I believe, sorry, let me just find my emails here. I got a billion emails. Okay. Believe so your intention, I think, was to call an emergency board meeting on the 24th rather than just do the first meeting in December then, or?
Yeah, since that's when we set the deadline towards.
Okay.
Right. If that does not work out, then we'll just have to do it for December. But I thought since we already, made the efforts to fill in the governor's Senate governor's vacancy, I think it's also prudent that we give time for whoever fills in the Senate vacancy to be trained and also be informed about all the relevant matters.
No, I mean, I think that's a great idea. No, I just based on kind of the tenor of the discussion Friday, that's all. I was just kind of
perfect.
clarifying.
Yes, and also in addition to that, the Secretary of the Senate has already been informed of the process, and it's just awaiting for our approval or the results of the by-election. So yes, is there any other questions for myself? But yes, the university secretaries, that would be Anna. There's no, if there's no other questions, then I'd like to pass it off to President Yamanoff for her comments.
I think Director Del Giudice had a question.
Oh, sorry, my bad. I did not see your hand. Did you have a question, Director Del Giudice?
Yeah, my apologies. I'd like to declare a conflict of interest for the honorarium discussion.
Yeah.
So I am a recipient of an honorarium, just putting that out there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, excellent. If there's no other questions for myself, then now we can pass the comments from the president and CEO.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to keep this as brief as possible, being mindful of the time. Not too many changes to report, but there have been some small adjustments that are going to be made more on the hiring end of the STAR process, just so that everyone on the board's informed. I'm also just taking on some of the USA role. So this week I've been meeting with some MPPs doing the provincial lobbying or provincial advocacy week with USA. Beyond that, we've also had Alana, our new VP programming and student services, Waterloo, fill the role for at least this is her second week. So she's just getting adjusted. And I think that's where I'll leave it for now in relations to my updates this evening.
Thank you for those updates. Do we have any questions? Yes, Director Bothwell.
Are we getting rid of STAR?
No.
Finally? Oh, that's like so stressful.
Yeah, no, we're just a few adjustments to assist with the grading process.
Oh, okay. That's all my questions then.
Okay, perfect. Do we have any other questions for the president and CEO? Is your hand still up, Director Bothwell, or is that another question?
No, it's not.
Okay. Okay, perfect. If there's no further questions, then I'd like to thank President Yamanoff for her time, and we can move on to the comments from the Executive Director and CEO. So pass off to Executive Director Champagne.
Hey, I also don't have a ton to update this week. Wilfs and the hospitality team is continuing to work towards a pilot program of in-person dining in the month of December I believe we're looking at trying to do it for a 2-week period to see what can be done and what the level of service needs to be in an effort to, as he raps gently on wood, potentially have in-person dining return in January. So we're looking forward to that pilot, and hopefully it'll be successful and we'll be able to launch business as usual, sort of, in January. Other than that, this year the Students' Union has a few agreements with the university that are set to expire. So some preliminary conversations around those agreements in terms of their renegotiation and possible extension are slated for December and or January. So looking forward to getting into that work. Other than that, it's pretty much business as usual. Ooh, the U desk in Waterloo has an actual desk, but in typical 2-floor lounge project problematic problems, it covers up some data port outlets and things of that nature. So we're working with facilities to try to correct some of those errors so that we can have a fully functional U desk ready to go on the 2nd floor as of January.
Okay. Well, thank you for those updates and comments, Executive Director Champagne. Now opening the floor for questions. Yes, Director Del Duce.
Thank you for your comments. So in terms of staffing at Wilfs, I was under the impression that one of the reasons why we could not do indoor dining is because Wilfs was so understaffed. So what is the status on the amount of employees that will be available for in-person dining? And will there be any accommodations to operating hours depending on how many people are working there?
So quick answer to the first question, and I may ask you to re-ask the second question. So the first question is staffing levels. That we're still ongoing hiring. And that's very much the reason why it's a pilot project into return. It won't be a full capacity restaurant. For the pilot, it'll be a very limited capacity in-person experience in an effort to find out where those balances are for us to be able to do in-person dining with the staff levels that we have and try to determine what those levels are in terms of being able to increase capacity. And the second question was which again?
So since we have like a lower staff numbers, you mentioned that we're going to set capacity issues. But how would the hours look for Wilfs? Are they going to go? Are there going to be like certain hours for seating that are going to go down as opposed to usual pre-pandemic levels?
All of those things will be worked out with and through the pilot process. So the hours will maintain the same. So there'll be a lunch period, and then there'll be a break for us to kind of clean up, and then there'll be a dinner period. And then they'll try their best to try to figure out and set what those hours would be for January. It's incredibly likely that we won't be returning to 7 days a week this year, and very unlikely that we will go from our 11 o'clock in the morning till 2 a.m. model that we had pre-pandemic. But we will try to cover those areas and time periods that we know are busy. Part of the project that includes taking the U-desk from the 1st floor up to the 2nd floor is the current U-desk space on the 1st floor will be reserved for Wilfs to specifically alleviate the pressure of the takeout. So the takeout model will likely have its hours extended rather than extending the entire full service, if that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Excellent. Just a quick question from the gallery from Nicholas. What will be going on in the existing U-desk location? So I believe he's referring to the little corner and beside the Golden Hawk.
Yeah, and I inadvertently answered that question. It's going to be reserved for Wilfs takeout, at least in the short term. There may be opportunities in the longer term, but for next semester, for sure, it'll be Wilfs takeout.
Okay, excellent. Next, Director Vale.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, to the Executive Director. No, thank you for your comments. And I guess, and this probably is going to be more focused on Wilfs, or probably I would think more of the hospitality sort of department in general. I think I'm assuming that's where we tend to have a lot more like part-time employees and like the is the, I'm just wondering if you'd be able to comment, if you're not in a position and you don't have the information tonight, no worries, but to comment on sort of the potential financial risks or impact related to the, I don't believe it's yet officially passed, but the new minimum wage, in terms of the fact that the liquor fund's going to be gone.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I misunderstood the end of your question there, but I got you. I got there. Yeah. So we've definitely been in discussions, obviously, with the legislation. We have no choice. And so there's all kinds of overarching questions that are being asked operationally. What is the impact on the prices of the menu items inside of Guelphs, for example, and things of that nature. Many years ago, the board of directors decided that one of their core principles for our organization would be to have affordable prices for the menu items. And so that may end up being a discussion, because the minimum wage may force us to adjust that, adjust some of our prices to a point that may or may not be, or dare I say, would be debatably affordable. So there may be a bigger conversation coming, but we are preparing to present a brief for the board of directors meeting on December 1st, letting them know essentially what the impacts would look like once that takes effect in January.
I hope that answers your question, Director Vale.
Yeah, no, it does. And I think you've kind of read my mind. So I think I guess we'll wait for the information in December. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Is there any other questions we have for Executive Director Champagne? As I see none, then we can thank him for his updates and move on to the next agenda item, which is the January 2021 elections policy review discussion. So I'm not too sure how much time we should actually spend with this, since we haven't hired the CRO, which the process is undergoing, will be talked about later today. But I think it'll be important to discuss. So I think the main points is the election dates. Like, what will this election look like? Will it be in terms of in a similar vein to the previous AGMs? Will it be an in-person versus remote voting? I believe that Director Vale has some comments about that, about it being mandatory that we have to vote in person. And then I think the biggest, or no, okay, no, I've been mistaken. And then I think the most important one is in terms of signature requirement. I'm sure that our new directors who just joined us can recall the process of gathering signatures was a very interesting and albeit difficult one. So I'm not too sure how we should go about this. Do you want to just have a quick preliminary discussion right now about some topics that directors have on their mind, or do you want to table this for the next meeting when we hopefully have a CRO by then? Yes, Director Vale.
Yeah, I think perhaps tabling it, but I think maybe a general sort of direction we want to take this in. Like, one thought I have is, I know you discussed around the signature requirement stuff, and I think my sort of thinking would be perhaps we get the CRO, and then from there, then maybe we look at sounding up like a sort of an ad hoc committee of some directors and yourself with CGO and perhaps CRO and any operational resources, and kind of so you and the CRO can sort of do the initial thing, and then that committee can kind of look at like what are the trends, or make recommendations and bring back sort of something more fleshed out to the board.
Okay, I believe Executive Director Champagne would like to speak to that.
I just want to caution the board in terms of the calendar and the timelines of all of that, because nomination packages typically start to go out in and around December, and the next board meeting is in fact scheduled for December, and the last day of classes is a week after that. So you just be very careful with committee work, etc.
Yes. Thank you. Our director of, let me hopefully get this right, is it Policy Research and Advocacy? Mueller?
Yeah, that's right. My
you go.
comments were similar to Phil's in that we're already operating behind the standard timelines in terms of having the policies approved and the date set. So if there was one piece that the board might be able to consider dealing with tonight, it could be the election dates, given that those, generally speaking, are pretty standard from year to year. But the work does need to proceed pretty quickly, because the shorter the amount of time that you have the nomination packages available directly impacts your ability to recruit candidates.
From one election to another, as they say. Yeah, no, but that is an excellent point, Ian. Yes, Director Vale.
Yeah, like, and I agree. Like, I was thinking more on the policy side, but I think the date thing, I think we really don't have a lot of time to get that fleshed out. I would agree. I think, and I think the trouble for me is I just don't have the information in front of me in this agenda package, but and I don't have the hindsight of being able to refer to like last year's calendar. But my thinking is perhaps we just sort of mimic last year's sort of dates or schedule, but just reflecting the timing of when we're back and stuff.
The only issue with last year is I believe that there was an additional like week off that the Senate approved, so that might.
Yeah, no, that's why I just saying like that mimics would follow sort of that, like that, and when in terms of when we're back and stuff.
Yes, Executive Director Champagne.
So I think the January falls very naturally into the election cycle as normal. I hesitate to use the word normal, but the first day of classes is Tuesday, January the 4th. If you end up having your all candidates meeting that following Sunday, can't remember the date off the top of my head, and then you've got the 2 weeks and change campaign period, the voting days would very naturally fall on the 25th, the 26th, and the 27th of January. So I think that the board should, if they're comfortable, should be okay in making that decision. And then we can kind of build backwards. And to Brandon's point inside the chat, if there is going to be a meeting on the 24th, there is an opportunity to kind of have a little bit more time to have a discussion on some of the other stuff. But to Ian's point, if we can set the election dates and then work our way backwards to like all candidates meeting, to nomination packages due, et cetera, it all kind of naturally falls like dominoes.
Thank you, Executive Director Champagne. Before I get to your point, Director Vale, I do have the election schedule from the January 2021, so I think that would be most useful for everyone to look at. And now you have the floor, Director Vale.
Yes, thank you. No, that sort of helps because I don't obviously have access to this document. And so I think, no, I would agree with the executive director's comment. Like, I think that timeline follows naturally. Like, I think that the Sunday of the week back, I think that's good. It kind of gives students a few more days, potentially depending on what might transpire with the signature aspect, and to get their packages timely in. And then I think we just really need, and then I would agree sort of with the voting period. And I think it's really going to kind of line up in terms of do we have a December on there at all? On that calendar?
December?
Just in terms of sort of when nomination packages are open and stuff.
No, they do not. Well, I can tell you when nomination packages were open for this particular one. Let's search through it. Package.
So they closed the Thursday, and so the all candidates was the when
all
was that?
candidates was the all candidates
Sunday or Saturday?
was
Don't
the
recall.
10th, and that would have been
All candidates is almost always on a Sunday.
yeah.
Okay, so I guess my thinking then is maybe we close nominations on the Thursday of the
well, what we could
or
do.
the Friday.
Yeah, we could close nominations on the Friday, right, and have
Yeah.
the all candidates being on the Sunday of January 9th, and then
No, actually, no. I think because I think last year, since we started that week earlier, like I think that was a full week, was it not? I'm trying to recall. Whereas this week, you're sort of that Monday will be the stat holiday, so I think that maybe the Friday before this, and then the Sunday, all candidates might fit a bit more naturally, just to give a bit more time.
Ian, would you like to speak?
Yeah, so I could say that the operational recommendation would be set the all candidates meeting, the campaign period and the voting days. And then when you reconvene on the 24th, you can make a final determination about when nomination packages are released and due. That gives you a little bit of extra time on those particular dates, but setting the election dates allows us to begin coordinating the parallel faculty association elections, which we've been in conversations with, as well as the conversations that we have to have with Laurier's ICT department to get the ballots back set up. So looking at the calendar in previous years, that would have the all candidates meeting on Sunday, January 9th. Campaigning generally commences a half hour following that meeting. Campaigning would conclude on Monday, January 24th, which leaves you with voting days, January 25th, a Tuesday, January 26th, a Wednesday, and Thursday, January 27th, with results night happening that Thursday evening, which then importantly gives the operational team the opportunity to onboard the successful candidates on the Friday before the next weekend.
Okay, I think that is a very prudent recommendation. Yes, Director Vale.
Yeah, I'll make that move that as a motion that we sort of adopt those dates. And I think I agreed to the Director Policy Research and Advocacy's point, because I think depending on like the signature requirement, that could potentially shift the ability of when packages are due, just given the less lead time that might be required to the processing behind the scenes. So some of the policy aspects could sort of naturally flow into that. But I think those core dates, I think it's good to set. So I'll move that.
Okay, just for the purposes of the motion, the record, can you repeat the specific dates in terms of?
I don't have
recommend?
them. Let me just look at my calendar. But if the director has a
Yeah, so it would be January 9th for the all candidates meeting. Sunday, January 9th. And then the campaigning concludes Monday, January 24th. Voting days, Tuesday, January 25th, Wednesday, January 26th, and Thursday, January 27th, with results the night of January 27th.
Hopefully back at Wills.
I am hoping to as well. I know JS will be happy with that. Okay, so given those dates, we have a mover. So I believe that would be.
I already moved the motion.
Vale, and then we have a seconder, Director Del Giudice. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? As I see none. All those in favor, Director Bothwell,
I approve.
Director Bryant. Director Bryant. Okay, I'll go back. I'll come back. Director Del Giudice.
I approve.
Director McCarthy. I suppose he's still not here. Director Phillips.
I approve.
Director Smithington.
I'm gonna abstain here.
Okay. Director Vale.
I approve.
And Vice Chair Sneedy.
I'll abstain too.
Okay. And I'm assuming that both you and Director Smithington are abstaining because you are potentially running this election.
We're gonna have a tilt.
Okay, there you go. Perfect. Have it on the record. Okay, going back, Director Bryant. Okay, okay, Director McCarthy approves. So the motion passes 5-0 to 2 without Director Bryant. Okay, so being the process, working with operations to inform the those responsible on the university side for the board and governors, as well as the Senate with that in terms of the election dates. Okay, next we can move on to the ad hoc honorarium committee report discussion. So I'll pass that off to Director Vale.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just following the time, so I'm going to try and quickly. I'm assuming everybody's read it, so I'll just kind of give a very high level. And basically, the committee is essentially, there was discussion about, like, in terms of maybe reallocating some of the current duties of the chair, such as assembling the agenda packages, or really more the administrative aspects, to potentially operational roles that are full time, to be and then like obviously looking at reducing or eliminating the honorarium. But ultimately, the important thing is, I think operations team is going to conduct sort of a sector-wide analysis to kind of see what is sort of the trend across the sector, that being like student associations across Ontario and Canada. And the committee will meet once sort of some of that legwork has been done, and I think really the recommendation right now is we don't feel that we're in a position to be able to put any referendum questions forward. So really, we're just going to kind of work towards a compliance. We'll keep the committee will keep the board up to date, and I think we'll kind of come up with a plan for going forward. And if there's any questions, happy to answer.
Okay, do we
And then
have-
with that, I guess I'll just make a motion that the board of directors pursuant to governance process policies 2F and 2G receive and file this report as an update on the current work of the board honorarium ad hoc committee.
Okay, we have a mover. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Director Del Duce. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? Any questions about the report or to the chair of the honorarium ad hoc committee, Vale? If not, then all those in favor, Director Bothwell,
I approve.
Director Bryant. Okay, Director Bryant, do you approve? We'll come back to him. Director Del Duce,
I approve.
Director McCarthy. Director McCarthy, are you there too? Okay, thank you. Director Phillips,
I approve.
Director Smithington. Director Smithington,
Sorry, I just had to run out really quick. I
Oh. thank you. Director Vale
I approve.
and Vice Chair Sneedy.
I approve.
Yes, Director Del Duce.
I've been messaging Director Bryant, and he's saying that he's having some major connection issues.
Okay, so I guess we can leave out from this vote. So the motion passes with unanimous consent without Director Bryant, who is having some connection issues. Okay, next we can move on to our next ad hoc committee update discussion. That will be the ONCA, and I'll pass off to Vice Chair Sneedy. Vice Chair Sneedy, are you there?
Yes, sorry.
No problem.
There we go. So this is for, sorry, my audio cut out there. Can you just repeat yourself?
You're now presenting as chair of the ad hoc ONCA transition at the committee.
Yeah, let me get that quickly. Sorry, let me just find it here quickly. So for those who are unaware, we met on the 17th of November just to touch base on the ONCA Transition Ad Hoc Committee. The only person who was not there was PJ. Everybody else on the committee, including board resources, was there. And at the end, we recommended that the board of directors pursues a governance process policies 2F and 2G, receive and file this report as an update on the current work of the board on honorarium for the transition committee.
Okay, do we have any questions regarding that? Just making sure that everyone is kind of aware. So I think the main result of the committee discussion was that we would consult with the students union solicitor to establish what we need to do moving onward. And I don't believe that this committee has to do with an honorarium, right? In terms in the recommendation, no. So I think that's just a little mistake there, not a problem. So I guess with that being said, I guess can we have a motion to approve of the ONCA transition ad hoc committee report to follow up with the corporation solicitor? Motion by, I believe that was Director Vale, right? And then seconded by Director Del Duce. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? As I see none, all those in favor, Director Bothwell,
I approve.
Director Bryant. Oh,
I am back. Sorry about that. I
Oh.
had some connection issues.
no problem. Do you approve of the recommendation of the ONCA Transition Ad Hoc Committee? Sorry, do you approve, Director Bryant?
I approve.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Director Del Giudice,
I approve.
Director McCarthy. Director McCarthy there, or did he, or I think he.
I don't believe he's in the
he-
call.
I believe he dropped out of the call. We'll put down the thing. Director Phillips,
I approve.
Director Smithington,
I approve.
Director Vale,
I approve.
and Vice Chair Sneedy.
Should I abstain or am
I
I?
believe in this case, there should not be any major conflict of interest, so I think you were good to approve.
Thank you. I approve.
Okay, the motion passes with unanimous consent. Thank you. Moving on, we have the updates from the Finance Committee report. So I'll give that to Director Vale to present again.
Yes,
Chair.
thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I just for the sake of time, I imagine everybody's read the report. I think one of the big items, I guess, to point out would just be that the one section that was still non-compliant is the quarterly report to be provided to the board in September, which the board has not received to this date, I don't believe. And I think the other sort of aspects probably should be fairly straightforward. And the one aspect of providing the operations procedures agreement, I believe that may have been provided after in an email, but the committee was working off the information provided by Chair Dang that was submitted in the formal report that was presented to the board. I believe in August, the end of August or early September. I don't recall the exact date. And I think I'm happy to entertain any questions. If there are any, or
Do we have any questions for Director Vale as Chair of the Finance Committee?
okay, I guess I'll go ahead and maybe make a motion that we receive this report and file it.
Mhm. Okay, motion by Director Vale, seconded by Director Del Giudice. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? As I see none, all those in favor, Director Bothwell,
I approve.
Director Bryant,
I approve.
Director Del Giudice,
I approve.
Director Phelps,
I approve.
Director Symington,
I approve.
Director Vale,
I approve.
and Vice Chair Sneedy.
I approve.
Motion passes with unanimous consent. Yes, Director Vale.
Yeah, and just one thing, and again, it won't affect the vote, is I just want to note for the record is the GP2G2 that was sort of, I think, referenced after the board finance committee. That policy, the date was updated in our last meeting, just for the record. But I believe that was for the DIC though, as well. So it sort of fits in with both, but I just want to put that out there since that relates to this committee.
Perfect. Thank you, Director Vale. Okay, moving on to the committee elections. So we have 3 committee elections coming up. So first of all, for some context, we have the ad hoc hiring committees that was struck for purposes of hiring the board secretary. And now for the purposes of hiring the board CRO. However, after speaking to one of the committee members, which was Vice Chair Sneedy, because of the conflict of interest due to him running in the upcoming election, it was determined that he would step down from the election, aside from the committee, due to that. And now there is a vacancy on the committee. This is open to any director regardless of campus. However, I will say that if you are planning to run in the election, then you should declare your conflict of interest before join the committee. And then we can, as a board, decide whether or not, like, how big of a conflict that is, depending on the position and the specific situation. So yes, Director Vale.
Yeah, I'd nominate, I guess, Director Phillips or Director Bryant. I guess either. I'm not sure if either are planning to run in the election or sort of what their state is, or if they'd be willing to serve. But I guess I'd nominate both of them if they were interested.
Interested. Director Phillips, do you stand?
I do.
Okay. In that case, Director Bryant, do you stand?
I do not.
No. Okay. In that case, then is there any other nominations for the hiring committee? As I see none, can I get a motion on the table for the acclamation of Director Phillips to the board ad hoc hiring committee? Motion by Director Vale, seconded by Director Bothwell. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? As I see none, all those in favor, Director Bothwell,
I approve.
Director Bryant,
I approve.
Director Del Giudice,
I approve.
Director Phillips.
I approve.
In this case, I think
Okay.
it's prudent to abstain.
Okay, I abstain then. Sorry.
Yeah, just due to the nature of the hiring for the chief returning officer. Director Smithington,
I approve.
Director Vale,
I approve.
Vice Chair Sneedy.
I approve.
Perfect. Motion passes 6-0 to 1. Next, we have another direct inspection committee election. So this is for reviewing governance process, a GP2, G2. So there are 2 vacancies on this committee. It'll be served by 2 directors regardless of campus, including myself. Nominations are open. Yes, Director Vale. Sorry, Director Bothwell, my bad, my apologies. Sorry, yes.
Sorry. I nominate Director Bryant for this one.
Director Bryant, do you stand?
I do.
Okay. Now Director Vale.
Yeah, I was just gonna say ask Director Bothwell first, but Director Phillips, I'll nominate him.
Director Phillips, do you stand?
Just to clarify, are we allowed to be on multiple committees?
Yes, you are definitely allowed to be on multiple committees.
Okay, then yes, I do stand.
Okay, perfect. Do we have any other nominations? Okay.
No, let's go.
Okay, yes, Director Vale,
Director Smithington.
Director Smithington. Oh, do you want to actually open this to elections then, eh?
I think we have 3.
Is it 3?
Or sorry, or hold it. No, that's sorry. What is the? I don't have to double check the.
There's 3
policy
openings.
name.
I'll stand. If there's 2, I will not.
I believe direct inspection committees are only 2.
I'm a bit senile here at the moment, but let me check.
I think so.
Manual.
Like,
It's been a little.
While
been a
you
while.
while you figure, just double check. I'm going to turn off my alarm clock. Yes, Director Vale.
Just loading it here.
Yeah, I believe it's 2 since like with especially with all the committees that I've served on. If you remember, you served on one of the DICs and it was just yourself and Vice Chair Sneedy.
Yes.
Like remember that was just
Yeah.
it was just only 2.
Yep,
Yeah.
2. So yeah,
So yeah.
we're good.
Okay, so perfect. Okay, so in that case, any other nominations? As I see none, then we can get the motion on the table for the acclamation of Director Bryant and Director Phillips on DIC Committee GP2 G2. Motion by Director Del Giudice, seconded by Director Vale. Any discussion? Sorry, would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? As I see none, all those in favor, Director Bothwell,
I approve.
Director Bryant.
I abstain.
I don't believe you have to abstain for the DICs, but thank you.
I'll just approve.
Okay, Thank you. Director Del Giudice,
I approve.
Director Phillips,
I approve.
Director Symington,
I approve.
Director Vale,
I approve.
and Vice Chair Sneedy.
I approve.
Motion passes unanimous consent. Next, we have Direct Inspection Committee BMD 2A. Same rules apply. We need 2 directors regardless of campus to sit on that. So do you have any nominations? Yes, Director Vale.
Director Symington.
Director Symington, do you stand?
I do stand.
Thank you. Director Rothwell?
Is Director McCarthy still in here? No, right?
Unfortunately, Director McCarthy is
Okay.
not here.
Then Director Del Giudice.
Director Del Giudice, do you stand?
I do.
Okay. Is there any other nominations? As I see none, then can I get a motion on the table for the acclamation of Director Symington and Director Del Giudice to DIC BMD 2A? Motion by Director Vale, seconded by Director Bothwell. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? As I see none, all those in favor, Director Bothwell,
I approve.
Director Bryant. Director Bryant. You can come back. Director Del Giudice.
I approve.
Director Phillips.
I approve.
Thank you. Okay, Director Bryant approves. This connection is buggy for the record. Director Symington, do you approve?
I approve.
Director Vale,
Yes, I approve.
and Vice Chair CD.
I approve.
Motion passes unanimous consent. Now we can go to the agenda item, which next agenda item, which was the polled wire reports of GP 2B, 2C, 2D, and 2E. So before I open it up, so there were a couple of items that I'd just like to state, for the record of why the changes were made because of some errors that were either brought to my attention by directors reviewing the monitor reports or by myself upon second review. So if I can pull up both copies. So I am referring to the newest copy, but if you refer them just opposingly with the comments I sent in email, you can see where some of the big issues in terms of non-compliance stems from. So if you bear with me, I can set that up. And you can quickly go through. Okay, so the first major change that error that I made was in GP2B1. So if you go there, originally I listed that as compliant, but because no ownership linkage event actually was planned in the fall term so far due to the board being preoccupied with the fall by-election, that section is non-compliant because we have not reached out to ownership this term. The second area of concern is GP2C7. So if we go down to that section there, that originally was also listed as compliant, but I've since changed it to non-compliant because of the fact that it says that minutes were reviewed and approved by the board at the beginning of every meeting, but unfortunately, because of the resignation of our board secretary, the last time the board has approved the minutes was June 10th, 2021. And since then, no minutes have actually been approved for the record to be presented back to the ownership. So that section is non-compliant. The next section that I updated was GP2D-1B. So that also was originally listed as compliant, but I since have changed it to non-compliant since multiple. So in point number 3, if compliance meetings only run over the allocated time when further discussion is necessary. There have been evidence of multiple meetings, emergency meetings that have run over time as a result, including this meeting here that have been over time since the allocated agenda package. So that section has been listed as non-compliant. And then another change is that I made was GP2E-3. So if you go down to that section there, 22E-3. So that section was listed as non-compliant, so it was compliant originally, but upon further review and speaking with the vice chair, I know like the vice chair of the board has not been provided with access to my work computer, since it is my personal computer that I do most of my work on, or the Zoom account here. So that password has not been provided. So yeah, so that section is non-compliant. And then the remaining issues that spoke with the vice chair is that there were just some wrong dates in the monitoring report, and that is it. So I'll leave it up to questions in regards to that, and we can work towards compliance and bring it into a consent agenda for a separate meeting in the future. So I do see Director Vale that you have your hand up.
Yeah, I have a number of items, and again, my comments, I've stripped out a couple now that you sort of gone through, but again, I haven't had time to review in detail your changes today, since they were sent at 2:18, I believe, or whatever it was, since I've been essentially at work in a meeting since 8 o'clock this morning through till now. So that doesn't give me sufficient. So I'll just kind of go through. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go through my sort of comments here, just based on the one that was sent out a couple days ago, and with respect to our 24-hour sort of constitutional policy, and then also our 48-hour board policy. So under GP 2C2, and again, this isn't a big deal, but the board also hired the DRO for the Brantford campus. That's just a small, actually, let me bring up references. Sorry, I got my GP.
Do you have a list? Do you have a separate list that you've compiled?
Yeah, just
all these issues
here.
I think that for the purposes of discussion, it would probably be prudent if you could possibly share that to board. I think that would just ease everyone.
2C2.
Recognizing that's late and probably people are not going to want to constantly flip through the morning reports.
I'm just gonna what I'll do maybe is I'll send sort of my comments out after, but I'll just kind of quickly go through them.
No problem. Take as much time as you want.
So be quick here. So GP 2C5 was actually, I won't worry about referencing. So under GP 2C5, I felt that the section should be non-compliant, as it's my understanding that the board doesn't have any official minutes or records dating back to, I believe, May. But I think in June where we approved the couple May ones. And I realize the operations team's working on the meeting. So in my view, the board documents are not accurate, current, or timely, and compliance therefore hasn't been established, in my opinion. GP 2C8B, I disagree with the CGO interpretation with respect to the latter half, as I feel it materially deviates from the bylaws of the corporation as it relates to being a member. No, I certainly sympathize with it, but in terms of the bylaws of our corporation, being a member of good standing is really defined under Article 2 of our bylaws. So just not the end of the world, but just more of a point of clarity there. That was relating to the do not hire aspect. And then the GP 2D4C, the evidence was cited that CROs to be hired in December, which to my knowledge has not occurred. And then the GP 2D4E, I don't feel this section's been compliant, since on the majority of occasions, agendas have been sent little more than 24 hours. Like under this policy, it was 48 hours, making it tough to review agenda items. And then GP 2D4H, policy amendments were made, I believe, back in October, to essentially extend the audit deadline to December and the November. So those deadlines, which again was evidenced in the package today with the board finance committee, just the policy manual wasn't updated, and it's still, the old version is still on the website. And then I think that like the vice chair one, that was rectified by your comments. That was all. Thanks.
Okay, no problem. So if you were able to send me those issues concerned, I can take another review of that and make sure that we can work towards compliance as my role as chair and CGO. I don't believe that a motion.
Yeah, I just put my hand up again. So what I was going to do is
no
make a
problem.
motion to essentially defer this to the December meeting. Yeah, that's our next one. So December 1st. Essentially, that just gives you some time to maybe go back and see what, and then the board can sort of go work on it from
Yeah,
there.
not a problem at all. Motion by Director Vale, seconded by. Director Del Giudice, would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? As I see none, all those in favor, oh, yes, Director Vale?
I was just gonna add, no, I think it's good we defer as well, just so we can also incorporate the elements that you, sort of those updates that you made today as well, just because none of us probably have really had time to digest.
Okay, perfect. Any further discussion on the matter? As I see none, all those in favor, Director
Approve.
Bothwell?
I
Thank you. Director Bryant? Thank you. Director Del Giudice,
I approve.
Director Phillips,
I approve.
Director Smithington,
I approve.
Director Vale,
I approve.
and Vice Chair Sneedy.
I approve.
Okay, motion passes unanimous consent, so I'll give the board an updated monitoring report for the December 1st meeting. Now for the final item of the agenda, so we have our midterm review of the of myself as chair and CGO, the president, and please forgive me, Ian, is this the board review to where the board reviews operations as well, or is that in April?
The only board review of operations is through the review of the president.
Okay, so perfect, yeah, okay. I just want to make sure, because I was referring back to the original midterm review that was performed last year for that there. So can I get a motion on board to go into in camera to perform the midterm review? Motion by Director Smithington. Seconded by Director Del Giudice. Would you like to speak to your motion? Oh, any discussion on the matter? Yes, Director Bothwell.
Yeah, I just have a question.
Yeah.
How thorough / long of a review is this? And is it a good idea that we're doing it at 10:30 at night?
This is just simply a review of performance based on policy. This is, I think it's, although I do recognize it's late, we do have to get this.
I just
done
don't think it'll
tonight.
be sorry. I just don't think it'll be productive at 10:30.
Yeah, I understand that this is a late meeting, but this is something that we have to get done prior to the end of November to meet at least within the our own policy manual.
Well, we do have an emergency board meeting next week. So I'm just putting that out there. It is really late.
Okay. Yes, does any other director share that sentiment?
Yes, I was just going to echo that as well. I think perhaps, I mean, since I think maybe we just use sort of next week, just given that we had the transit and some other really sort of lengthy, that sort of took quite a bit of time. I think in the interest of being
Okay.
fair and that we maybe do it that way. And to Ian's point, I think that is correct, as it's not really, since it's really just a scheduled meeting anyway, since we're still within well within the notice requirement.
Okay, well, that sounds good. So with that being said, I guess directors who motion, would you like to retract your motion for going in camera?
Phil has his hand up.
Oh, yes, Executive Director Shem.
If this is a motion that's going to go forward and the board members agree to it, I would strongly encourage everybody get nice and familiar with your policy handbook, because we have to evaluate performance based on policy. Thank you.
Yeah, that is something that I will very strongly will remind everyone that this is not a performance review of anyone in terms of I guess, just simply based on actions within the policy, such as, for example, would be right now with the monitoring reports too as well, right? In terms of compliance and non-compliance. But that being said, I guess we have a retraction of the motion to go in camera for today. And I guess with that being said, can I have yes, Director Del Giudice, I suppose you're retracting that original motion?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So then can I get a motion to table the midterm review for the November 24th board meeting and to adjourn the meeting? Motion by Director Bothwell, seconded by Director Vale. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? Which, as I see none, all those in favor, Director Bothwell,
I approve.
Director Bryant. Thank you. Director Del Duce,
I approve.
Director Phillips,
I approve.
Director Smithington,
I approve.
Director Vale,
I approve.
and Vice Chair Sneedy.
I approve.
Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Oh, actually, I forgot before everyone leaves, if anyone has any new business announcements, might as well say it now. I, for myself, just really want to say welcome Director Phillips and Director Bryant to the board. We really appreciate having here, and we're extremely excited. And I think you can tell by today by the length of discussion, and I think the the quality of questions that we're very happy to be operating in almost a full board. Yes, Director Bothwell.
Yeah, Laurier Bowling Club is having a big event at Binghamton's on the 29th, and tickets are $10, and transportation and 2 hours of bowling is provided. So
I see. I'm trying to see if I can get out of my dawn meeting.
yeah, get out of the dawn meeting. It's not necessary.
That was approved through the campus clubs process, right?
Oh yeah. Me and Jason had some meetings about that, but he built buses for me. It's a pretty big event.
I'm really excited that like some in-person events are happening. I trust me, I've told my students about that, and they're like, what? In-person bowling?
Yeah, tell them to come. We have 90 tickets. So
amazing. Oh, don't worry, I am telling them to come. But yeah, no, thank you for that announcement. And Phil?
I was just gonna say, kind of on that note, a big shout out to the One Card office in Waterloo for opening up in-person bookings for boothing and things of that nature in the concourse. We had the record store guy back for the first time in 2 years. So slowly yet surely, emphasis on slowly, the campus is coming back to life. So it's nice to see.
Yes. Oh, trust me, I spent a little bit of money at that record thing earlier this week. It was fun. But other than that, thank you so much, everyone, and I'll see you in 1 week for next meeting.